Administration.
Wow. I think right now I need to learn Swahili as well. It just sounds nice when it's spoken like, oh, wish I could speak that. Hello, Okiogene Migwa.
Brendo, that's very good. Good morning.
Good morning.
The language you don't know how to speak from Swahili now to Wow.
No, we're trying. I just you to learn languages. That's why GC tries to connect the dots in Africa. So
Okay.
who knows? Over time, very soon. Let me see, please. Nobody should come from Uganda or Zimbabwe. I don't know how to speak your own.
Don't worry, I'm coming behind you too. I've been to Rwanda. I've spent some time in Rwanda too, and Ghana. So maybe I'll be catching up with you just a bit. I'm not very familiar with the language, but you're giving me a learning point. So I'll pick up the language and throw some at you too.
No, one thing I always love about Uganda, Rwanda, is there's this beauty of the accent when it's in spoken, especially in the movies. You get the so I come to your house and you tell me what you want to tell me. It's not fair at all. You need to understand better principles, and it's so nice.
I agree 100%. So I did an MBA with African Leadership University in Kigali. So over the 2 years, we had yes, most of my class were Rwanda.
Amazing.
We had 24 nations in Africa represented in that class. So it was a fire hall.
It was really a fire hall.
One of the things I like about it. So much power.
Amazing, so nice. I also see Abdul Razak in the call. Sanu.
Hello.
Hello, Abdul Razak. Sanu.
I'm not also.
Okay, so are you Yoruba then?
What did you say?
Are you Yoruba?
Yes.
Ekaro. At least I know that
one. Okay, Ekaro, what you are in afternoon actually. It's 12 already.
Okay, Ekason or Eka, which one?
Yeah, Ekason, yeah, you get it.
Hallelujah. I see that, okay, it's already 12. I see one of our mentors is on ground. I know his own language is one that I cannot make a mistake. Mr. Gabriel, sir, good afternoon. In fact, oh my God. Sadina, I just forgot how to say it.
I know you're still going, after spending all the years in Rio, struggle to say it. We are going to withdraw your certificate from you.
You start with
I legit just forgot how to greet in video. I miss Ray.
Is it still morning where you are? It's afternoon here.
Oh my God, please, I'm finished.
You're going to struggle with that for how long? Okay, let's see how long.
Mbappe, I'm sorry.
Hello, Sam, how are you? How is Abuja today?
Fine, sir. Abuja is great, sir.
Enjoying the heat, right?
Not really. Where I stay, we have electricity, so.
No, I mean, the temperature here is 20 degrees today, and we are, people are going crazy. People are not wearing clothes out at 20 degrees. So
in Germany,
I to Abuja, it was, in Berlin. Last time I
got to
it was.
I want to visit.
You're welcome to visit anytime.
So that all of us will just go crazy.
You're welcome. For us,
hello, everyone. Go ahead, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
No, I said for us Africans, it's a little bit normal. It's not
exactly.
Big. Last time I was in Abuja, I was seeing 38 degrees, and
in fact, for us Nigerians,
I was speaking with my professor, and he was like, "How are you still wearing a shirt in 38 degrees?" Like there are people that are still wearing jackets, wearing suits to work.
In my law school in Kano, imagine where it was so hot and we had to still wear suit and tie.
Yeah, I revolted in Enugu. I was in Enugu. I revolted. I started wearing short sleeves. Everybody said I was going to be sent out, but I wasn't ready
At a
to kill
point,
myself. Yeah.
I think one lecturer came and said, "Why are you killing? Remove your tie." Even in court, when it's still hot, the court will say, "Lawyers, take off your wig and gown and
Yeah.
rest. Breathe. Do
Just
not die before your court to the bar."
no, I won't do that to myself.
Thank you so much, sir. It's amazing to have you around.
Thank you.
Checking through some of our mentees, and I see they are still coming in. It's already past 12. Mr. Hussein, thank you so much for having me on this call. Hello everyone, once more, I am Gottlieb Kamaloni, and I'll be a co-moderator for today's session. This is still JIIPCC. I say JIIPCC is the connecting dot for Africans with regards to young practitioners and young people preparing us for the future. That's an amazing thing I've learned with JIIPCC. In my few months with JIIPCC, I've been schooled, I've learned, I've relearned, I've unlearned a lot of things, and it's really amazing. Every session with JIIPCC feels like a whole new world, a whole new exposure to a whole new different set of things. And thank you so much. I know that mentees, you're also feeling the same way with JIIPCC. JIIPCC just has a way of blowing your mind. And then our mentors come in, and when JIIPCC blows your mind, mentors now do what? Now, they add the kaboom to the boom. So it's really, really amazing. Thank you so much. So this is week 3 in the artificial intelligence class of the JIIPCC program, Mentorship and Internship program, second quarter for the year 2023. I'm so grateful to God that it's moving smoothly. This is one class that nobody should miss. And today's topic is robotics. And now that's one beauty of JIIPCC. You get topics that I think I like using the word blow your mind. So we're looking at robotics and oversights. Okay, so thank you so much. So it's being someone who has passed through this class, I would say this is actually one of my favorite topics, because I was really scared of robots at a point. And so will robots take our jobs? Okay. Oh God. Okay, so briefly, let's talk about the JIIPCC program. So we'll briefly discuss the JIIPCC program and what it's actually about. I believe Mr. Hussein is trying to share the screen for that. Okay. I'm still trying to see how much I can stall. To know how many mentees are here. I think I'm just seeing 3 mentees for now. I hope before we're done with every introduction, our mentees will be on board. Okay, about the JIIPCC program. The JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship program is a quarterly program for students and young professionals across Africa. Mentees are afforded the opportunity to access valuable advice, training, network, mentorship, internship, discussion forums, industry updates, and resource materials from experienced mentors. The program seeks to encourage continuous training, development and evolution in Africa and around the world. You can reach out. You can watch our videos by searching for JIIPCC on YouTube and Facebook. If you go on YouTube, you'll see various classes of JIIPCC on YouTube, and I think that also helped me a whole lot. I'll confess now, there are times where I had to go watch the previous class before I get ready for the next class, because it helped me a whole lot. It trained me, it prepared me for the next class and what to expect. Also, sometimes through my slide. Objectives of this program. The program aims to provide easy access to quality professional guidance, training, and resource materials for students and young professionals in Africa. It aims to facilitate dialogue and network among experienced and less experienced practitioners and stakeholders, to transform mentees into mentors and leaders for the next generation. Is actually one of my favorites of the objectives of JIIPCC, because I've seen it happen a whole lot. I used to be a novice in AI, and then imagine writing an article online about AI during my mentorship in the AI course. And one of these foreign AI bodies actually saw it and liked it. It was a normal thing I wrote, but they actually had liked what they saw. And after then, I know my office, I had a session with my office people on AI and as well Guardian. So imagine me, a mentee with JIIPCC. Now, I was given juice and chicken for that particular session I had with them. All I had to do was go through my class, go through my slide on AI, Guardian AI, and we have to ensure that we handle them, we respect them. That gave me a whole lot of credence. So thank you, JIIPCC, for that. Indeed, JIIPCC really, really transforms mentees into mentors and leaders for the next generation. And also to facilitate further mentorship, internship, scholarships, and job placements to the mentees. It doesn't end here. I know that there are mentees who, in the IP course, there are mentees who went as far as going to WIPO on scholarships, thanks to the exposure they got through JIIPCC. There are also times you write amazing articles online and people actually go through it and they are amazed with the kind of things you're writing. It can give you scholarships. Now, imagine a winner of an amazing competition over there in Germany as one of your mentors. Think of what you can benefit from that. I'm already thinking, let me go and get my passport ready. Germany, here I come. Okay, thank you so much, Hussein. We'll move right next to knowing more about our mentors. I know that if anyone has been following this particular platform, you know Mr. Gabriel is no new face to JIIPCC mentorship. So Mr. Hussein, please, if you don't mind, can I have this profile, please? Quickly with that, thank you. I hope our mentees are here. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can all hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Hussein. Okay, thank you. When a man's profile is this fat and this thick, only expect greatness. So first off, I'm going to say something. Mr. Gabriel Udo was my senior colleague at the prestigious University of Yale. Yes, I met him in person, flesh and blood. Among the people that I wanted to steal their notes back in the university. So you never give me your notes, but I forgive you. It's fine. He was an amazing senior colleague, one of the few ones who could relate to the junior colleagues, and his own mentor I know that we'll learn a whole lot from. Mr. Gabriel currently is a PhD candidate in autonomous weapons systems and international humanitarian law at Europa Universitat Viadrina, Frankfurt oder, that's Germany. Mr. Gabriel is a researcher in AI law, policy, and ethics. His thesis analyzes ethical and legal implications of introducing autonomy into lethal weapons systems. Previously, he won the DAD funding for his project, Intelligent Weaponry, Laws and Ethics, and later joined the International AI for Earth Observation Lab in Munich as a Beyond Fellow. With a passion for exploring the intersection between technology and ethics/law, his research spans across a wide range of areas, including ethical responsible uses of AI, smart city technologies, digital colonialism, privacy comparative analysis in the application of technologies, autonomy in weapons systems, and more. As a strong advocate for human-friendly autonomous systems, Mr. Gabriel is committed to designing technologies that prioritize the needs and well-being of humans. Additionally, he possesses an intermediate level of proficiency in Python programming, allowing him to understand sophisticated software solutions to complex problems. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's celebrate Mr. Gabriel Udo in the class today. Welcome, sir. We're so pleased to have you. It's a rare privilege to have someone of your quintessential reputation. Amazing job having you in class today, sir.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you. And he's so humble. not just humility, like he's so humble, and then when he opens his mouth to start saying things, he blows your mind. It's he has always been like this, guys. He's always been like this, one of the best from his set, and always so. Okay, we'll move on to our next mentor. So saying thank you, sir. I don't know if our next mentor is on the call already. I don't think so yet. Okay, while we're getting ready for that, please, presenters for both groups, kindly get ready for your presentations, please, because once our mentors are done with their introductions, you'll be moving straight up into your introduction, your presentation for your group. Please kindly get ready. Those whoever is sharing the slide, please kindly get your slide ready. Presenters, get your voices ready and get ready to impact our minds. Thank you. Okay. Our next mentor for today as well is the beautiful Magdalena Koenig. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Magdalena Koenig is a key member of the AIQ's executive leadership team. As the general counsel of AIQ, she's responsible for the oversight of the legal governance and compliance system, department, including business structure and operations. She is part of the team that brought AIQ into Fusion, drawing on her vast international experience as an advisor to public and private organizations. Magdalena specializes in the legal framework of IT integration and implementation, strategic IT and business process outsourcing, cloud services, data management, licensing, and support agreements. She holds a postgraduate degree in law and was accepted as a member of the Law Society of England and Wales in September 2021 upon completion of her training at Shoesmiths LLP, where she was a member of the commercial, technological, and outsourcing team specializing in ICT and outsourcing projects. Please, is the beautiful Magdalena on the call with us, please? I don't know. I don't think she's on the call yet with us. Okay, Mr. Hussein, please, are all our mentors on the call or just Mr. Gabriel, so we could quickly move into his introduction? Okay, while we wait for that, I know that the mentees and myself as well were eager to hear from Mr. Gabriel. Mr. Gabriel, please, the floor will be open to you to introduce the topic on robotics and oversight, and as usual, blew our minds. The floor is all yours, sir. You have about 10 minutes for that introduction. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Oslo. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you, as usual, to the organizers for always giving me the opportunity to be here. Like I always mention, I learn a lot whenever I come here. I always go back home with something new ideas, and so I'm not just a mentor here. I also get mentored sometimes. I learn a lot of things, especially when we're dealing with interdisciplinary areas that you cannot claim to have access to all the information. You can be a lawyer, but as deep as I've gone into technology, I understand that there's still a lot that you would never get to find out just by sitting within the confines of being a lawyer, that you need to get outside your safe room. In interactions with professionals from other fields, I remember 2 weeks ago, there's a session we had. I can't remember the mentor, but I think was it Mr. Samuel, his presentation. I picked a couple of things and I did some extra research on them, and I discovered that there's still a lot more that could be done in certain areas of artificial intelligence ethics. So thank you for the usual opportunity to be here. And so today we are going into the very the seemingly complicated area of technology, basically on robotics. And like I had mentioned in some of the instances I've spoken about artificial intelligence, technology generally, let's be more general now. Technology is the new wave is coming with a wave of societal changes. Many things are changing, and more things are going to keep changing. We're going to keep having adjustments in sociocultural norms. We're going to keep having adjustments in the legal systems, complete change of certain laws. Yesterday, I was involved with a research with some professors on legal issues surrounding the metaverse. And it occurred to us that there are so many areas of law that would have to be reviewed. Copyright law with regards to systems, the creation of identities, human rights laws, contract laws, all sorts of laws, even criminal laws, for instance. And so technology is going to come with a whole lot of, we're going to have to review a lot of things if the society has to run along at, maybe not at the same pace, but at least be able to catch up with technological advancements. And this leads us to this very specific area in robotics. Let me quickly apologize for not having a slide. I'm not sure what happened. I was working on a slide yesterday and something else popped up. So I have a slide that is not a PowerPoint presentation that is not complete. But I made all my points here before beginning the slide. So I'll just probably speak from my head, or maybe pick some points from what I made, instead of having half slides and then it just ends somewhere. I think it would be more productive that way. And again, whatever the presentations we're going to have here, trust me, it's just going to be a skeleton of what we find in the field of robotics. Now the topic is robotics and oversight. Usually, if you mention this topic to core robotic experts, you're going to get mixed feelings with regards to the use of the word oversight with robotics. Not because it's not necessary, as we would see, but because most robotic experts, most technologists believe that the introduction of ethical terms like oversight, which we'll get to see, limits innovation. It reduces the pace at which we could produce, which we could innovate things, the society could grow, which to an extent may be true, but that's not the actual value of having some of these ethical considerations in building systems. And it's the same thing with robotics. But before we go into that, let's just look at the elephant in the room. What's robotics? I said here, robotics is an interdisciplinary field. It combines computer science, engineering, mathematics, and now we're trying to ensure that we have ethics and law in that field, in the process of designing, developing, and even operating robots. A robot in itself is a machine. Some are autonomous, some are semi-autonomous, but it can perform tasks and actions with varying degrees of complexity. So you have robots that can do certain things. You have robots that can do a lot less. They have greater dependence on human intervention. For instance, now we have there's this company, Boston Dynamics, in the US, that's producing robo-dogs. And these robo-dogs are capable of doing so many things. There are other robots that are used in factories. Some are already used. I mentioned last week, if you go to some airports, for instance, in Berlin here, you can check in without meeting a human person at any point. Everything gets checked in. These things are automated. The systems are there. Some are robots. There are some robots in China that are used to carry out services in restaurants. And we have robots in healthcare. We have robots in so many areas. Now, we've seen lots of advancements in recent years, and we've seen the developments of robots that are capable of mimicking human movements. Last week, I was watching a video where they were trying to introduce human emotions into robots. That's a whole discussion in philosophy and ethics and physics even completely. But what that means is that we're advancing to new eras, new areas in the development of robots. Before, we used to have robots in shapes and boxes. It moves from here to there, from here to there in a defined environment. But now we have robots that are more flexible. The ones we call humanoid robots are capable of making movements that are even similar to humans. We had in 2015 a robot. I'm sure most of us must have read about it. A robot was given a citizenship of a country, Sofia, so in Saudi Arabia, and that was the first. It's certain that others will follow in the long term. There are discussions as to even granting fundamental rights to robots. It's gone that far. So with these advancements, we now, it brings us to the importance of oversight. It's like having a child and monitoring the activities of a child. Once you have, depending on the level of independence of that child, then there's a requirement for monitoring. This is one of the things we look at in robotics. It's, considerably new, but if we go back to the earlier developments of robotics, there were the perceptions that robots would get to a point that would not really need human oversight. They should be able to carry out activities on their own. If you look at Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, I'm sure I saw it in the presentation. I would not want to touch much on it, maybe until after the presentation. Those 3 laws of robotics they give the impression that the human being will be, the involvement of the human being in the activities of the robots is going to be so minimal. So these laws were like directing the robots on how to behave and directing the creators on how to make a robot to behave. So it created that disengagement of some sort between the creator or the controller and the robot itself. A robot shall not harm a human. A robot shall not do this. It's like, for those of us that are Christians, you know how the commandments go. So those things give the first impression that you are independent. So as long as you are independent, these are the rules you have to follow. So the perception was that robots are going to be extremely independent, and that's where you have the merger between robots and artificial intelligence. The introduction of artificial intelligence into robots, into systems that have been built on machines that hitherto had been controlled by human beings. So it's like picking a human being and implanting a brain on the human body. So this makes the human body to be able to think or to carry out certain activities that have certain levels of independence. And this, as robots become more capable, we get more worried about what it's able to do. As long as it's able to do some good to help in factories, we also consider the negative aspects. If we have every employer has a robot, we have to look at issues of unemployment. If we have robots in the healthcare system, we have to look at ethical issues, medical ethics. If we have robots in law, for instance, we need to look at how to ethically use a robot in such a way that the whole legal process is not being roboticized or automated. So this leads us to the issues of ethical considerations. What are the things that we should we should worry about, that we think about? The first issue in almost every system that has a level of autonomy is privacy. Now, because certain robots are equipped with cameras and sensors, they collect vast amounts of data. If a robot has to walk, for instance, a car, an autonomous vehicle, for instance, it has to take pictures of the environment where it has to move. Okay, so any system that collects a lot of data has the capability to infringe on privacy of individuals, or there are going to be data protection issues. For instance, where is the data stored, who is keeping it, and all that. We have this in robots. We also talk about the very vital issue of safety. This comes up at every discussion with robots, and it's even more pronounced in the discussion of robots, in the discussions on robots, because most robots, in the technical sense, are systems that occupy a lot of space and they carry out a lot of movement, for instance. So if a robot has to work with a human being within the same space, how safe is the human being? You must have seen videos of the robots that was carrying baggages and just fell down. What if it falls on a human? How safe? And there are also robots in very open public spaces. So you have to prioritize the safety of human beings, and also even for the robots themselves. When building robots, you have to consider. It's like I see people drive very low cars in Nigeria, and I keep saying, "Are you sure you looked at Nigerian roads before buying this car?" Because these are things you have to consider the environment before building the robot. So you're going to destroy the systems itself by the environment it has to work. We also have to look at issues of accountability. We don't just build autonomous robots. define what they do. If something goes wrong, if they take an action independently, we need to know who to hold responsible if there are errors. There are many others. There are many other ethical issues, but these are the three most important that we look at when it comes to robotics. And like I mentioned earlier, most of the ethical issues in the use of artificial intelligence are also to be found here. So generally, you have the idea with responsible robotics, almost the same thing with responsible use of artificial intelligence, because most robots use artificial intelligence technology to carry out their certain activities. Now we look at the legal frameworks. Sincerely speaking, there have been quite less, there's not been lots of discussion specifically on robotics in the legal realm. Most of the laws that touch on robotics would be mostly on artificial intelligence. There are organizations that I'll mention sometime later in the presentation. There are organizations that have attempted to create enabling environments for legal, having legal frameworks. Some countries have this. We have laws that are general data protection laws that have been defined, or some certain aspects of those laws have been defined to create the understanding that robots are also covered, the activities of robots. For instance, we talked about the issue of privacy and data protection. You would certainly look at the GDPR in Europe, or the NDPR in Nigeria, or other data protection laws with regards to this. There are other, we can look at contract laws or employment laws. If you have to use a robot in the workplace and somebody gets injured, you have to look at the employment laws. What does the law provide with regards to the safety? What kind of protection does the employee have in regards to his workplace, and many other issues? So first we look at, there are certain laws that deal with licensing and certification of robots. Those that produce robots should have certain levels of certification. Now, again, these are not really pronounced. The field of robotics is really, really limited to a few people when compared to other areas of artificial intelligence and technology. You have thousands of programmers, you have millions of guys that can code, you have so many people, but you have very few people compared to, of course, that can have a robot, that can produce a robot, the structure and the software, and define the environment where these robots will operate and all. So first we look at licensing and certification frameworks. And then, like I mentioned earlier, there are also certain liability frameworks, like I mentioned, talked about employment laws and laws of contract, laws of tort, that some of which have also been extended to reach cover certain areas, or injuries, for instance, that employees have, or laws in regards to medical ethics, even human rights laws, protecting the human person from the activities of another person. In this circumstance, a robot is presumed to be controlled by a person. There's always a human in the loop. So if I own a company, every robot in that company at the moment is a representation of me. So if there's any problem, you hold me responsible. That's one of the issues that is still being debated. But so far, that's where it is. Now we look very quickly at oversight mechanisms. What suggestions do we have? What kind of mechanisms do we have to ensure that there's always a human in the loop of these systems? Robots there are many stages in robot production and use, in development and use rather. The planning phase, we have the planning phase where you plan, what do we need the robot for? What structure should it have? Is it a humanoid, or then the development stage, and then the stage where it is actually used, So in those stages, we also have we are proposing certain other stages after the use stages. For instance, we have to go back to the whole process once in a while to check where the proper certifications done, and all those things. So we're trying to add more stages to the development and the use of robotics to help with oversight. First, I mentioned here that it would be organizations can create ethics committees, for instance, have experts in diverse fields to be sure that at the point where we begin the process of building robots, there's an ethical consideration at every point. So we don't just finish building and say, oops, if we put this on the road, it's going to kill people. or if we put this in a workplace, it's going to fall and injure people. We could have had this at the point of production. Robots should also be explainable. We need to have as much transparency and explainability regards to robotic systems. The people that make them should be able to explain to the people that use them and the people against whom it is used. What is this robot capable of? Now, the problem basically with transparency these days, even with AI systems, is that the technologies understand that it's like lawyers when they choose to use jargons. We could, have a conversation for 1 hour and you would understand only 5 minutes of, that conversation. Okay, so let me quickly just run through the last slide. I also mentioned issues on auditing and reporting. Regular audits should be done on robots to ensure that they still meet the standards with which they are started. My last slide, I looked at the collaborative efforts. What kind of efforts should be made to be able to insist that there's an oversight on robots? First, governments and policymakers should collaborate. Secondly, there has to be a collaboration between industry and researchers. So we have a lot of people in academia that are doing, work in oversight, research in oversight related areas. These people should collaborate with industry. And then finally, there has to be public engagement. The people have to be informed as to what robots are being used in their societies. Maybe when I take the questions, I'll speak about maybe mention a couple of laws here and there that make touch a little bit on oversight in robotics. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I wait to get your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel. That's overwhelming as usual. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really like the fact of the vicarious liability and somewhat strict liability that owners of robots have. Yes, because there's one man that owns robot and planning. The man that did iRobot, that movie. That robot I thought killed Will Smith. That robot is in trouble. Thank you so much, sir. Amazing delivery as usual. Amazing delivery. I believe by now our mentees are getting ready. The presenter for Group 1. Mentees, please, let's give a round of applause to Mr. Gabriel. He did a good job. You can unmute yourself and just say thank you. Because that was a really, really amazing presentation. Please, you can unmute.
Thank you, sir, for the presentation.
Thank you very much, sir, for the perfect presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, I don't know, is the presenter for Group 1 ready, please? Group 1 presenter, are you ready, please? Is anyone from Group 1 here, please? Okay, Group 2, are you ready? Can we still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Which group is ready, please? Group 1, Group 2, any group ready for that presentation, please?
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I can just take the Group 2 presentation if Group 1 is.
Okay, perfect then, perfect.
No, ready. Not that I'm ready to, but I just have to present.
Okay, so that's Temitola, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you have 7 minutes for that presentation. Do a great job.
I have how many minutes?
7 minutes, please.
7 minutes. Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
We could keep a leverage for some more time, depending on delivery.
Okay.
Yes, so
all right.
You're talking about starting now. Please, Group 1 presenter, get ready. And every other mentee, please get ready. After this presentation, we'll be doing our picture time. So let's be on the call and let's also endeavor to turn on our cameras when necessary. So Temitola for Group 2, your 7 minutes starts now. Please go ahead with the presentation. You may share your slide.
All right. Let me share the slide. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay.
You might need to just put the slide on to play the slide.
On presentation, yeah, that's
yes,
what
please.
I want to do.
Just go to slideshow.
Yeah, slideshow.
It's up there.
Is my screen still up?
Yes, we can still see your screen, factors and elements of labor law.
Oh, okay.
Yes. If you just click on slideshow, you can see play slide.
So yeah, I think I've even used 1 minute of my time out of the 7 minutes.
No, go ahead.
I'll be talking on the topic robotics as it relates to labor law. And first, I'll presume that we all have heard about robots. We know what robots means, but for the purpose of this presentation, I'll just share some highlights that robots is a machine that is programmed by a computer and that can carry out some complex series of action automatically. Also, it has been defined as a type of automated machine that can execute specific tasks with or without human interaction or intervention, right? And there's been a lot of back and forth and also theories as regards to robots and even types of robots. And while doing research this morning, I also see that which I would also like to maybe speak to or ask our mentor about it, that robots is not necessarily AI, even though it has been used interchangeably, even though that's not our focus, but I would also like us to talk about that. So there's no consensus on which machines qualify as robots, but there's a general agreement among experts that it tends to possess some or all of the following abilities. It accepts electronic programming, it processes data, physical perception electronically, it can move around, and it operates physical parts of itself, and also exhibits intelligent behavior, especially behavior that mimics humans and other animals. And I think maybe that's what this presentation will talk about, the one that mimics humans' behavior. So yeah, labor law, because we're talking about robotica, it relates to labor law. And labor law, for those that are on the court are lawyers, they will be familiar with it. Why some of us are not lawyers, for the purpose of us, I'll just define it as the body of law that governs the employer-employee relationship, which includes employment contracts, whether individual, subcontracts, independent contracts to also fall in that. Talk about consultancy and all of those, then the application of torts, contract doctrine. It's also a large group of statutory regulation on issues such as rights to organize and negotiate, collective bargaining agreements, protection on discrimination, anything that has to do with employer and employee relationship, and also employment. I think the terms labor law is also being interchangeably used as employment law. So there are some factors of labor law that we'll just quickly glance through, and it can also relate to our discussion on robots and labor law. And that's one of it is protection of workers' rights. And like I said, labor law has to do with employee and employer relationship, and the laws even make provision for protecting the rights of employees' rights. And because I think I missed the part that I want to talk about robots being a legal person or having legal personality. I don't know if any of us know about Sophia the robot, a humanoid robot that I think it was in 2017 that it was given a citizenship, right? But the question remains that even with that citizenship, can we say that a robot has legal personality? The European Parliament also make recommendation as regards civil law and robots, right? So the discussion is still going on how to ensure that maybe Mentor also talks about the regulation of AI, regulation of robots. So how do we say that a robot has a legal personality right? So I just thought to chip that in while I go back to the factors and elements of labor law. So yes, one of the elements of labor law is protecting workers' rights and equality and non-discrimination. Employers should not discriminate among workers. There's also the issue of the right of protecting their sexual rights. There shouldn't be sexual harassment. Also, they also have rights to form trade unions, right? There is collective bargaining, the right of employee to engage in collective bargaining with their employers, just and fair working condition, right? The employer has the obligation to ensure that there is a proper and good working environment for the employee. So is labor law fit for purpose when it comes to robots? Like I mentioned, there's still a lot of conversation around giving robots legal personality. We all know that, yes, a robot.
Sorry, Temitola. Sorry, please. If you notice, your slide is actually frozen. So we're not really following with the slide. Thank you.
Oh, but I've moved it from my end. I don't know if. Sorry.
Okay, now it's moving.
Is it up?
Yes, it's up now.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know. Maybe it's the network. And I've been moving the slide actually. So I'm talking about labor law. Is labor law fit for purpose when it comes to robots? I mentioned some elements of labor law protecting workers against harassment, the right to even join trade union. And since robots is not human, right? And there's still question around whether it has legal personality or not, which is still ongoing. From my own research, I stand to be corrected. I don't think if there is any jurisdiction where they've given robots legal personality, right? And that takes me to another point that when we are even talking about regulating AI and robots, right, there's an important fact of taking cognizance of the jurisdiction of that particular country, right, where that regulation is being formulated. So for robots, there are machines, right, that does the work of humans, and sometimes they can be they can malfunction. So let's take, for instance, the issues of sexual harassment. How do we how do we make robots responsible for their action, right? So, and that's one part of the labor law. Then there's another part that talks to creating offensive environments. There's an example here. I don't know if you can see my screen about a Microsoft chatbot that caused controversy by learning some of the less vernacular use on Twitter. And because the robot does not have legal personality, right, it cannot be sued, right? Then the principle of vicarious liability, where an employer is deemed responsible for the unlawful act of its employee. But since robots cannot create framing liability, vicarious liability is not triggered.
Temitola, please, you begin to round off. You have 2 minutes left, please.
Okay, I already said that. Maybe that's 7 minutes. So I'll try just round up and move. So I've talked about the principle of vicarious liability as it relates to robots, which is one of the legal principle when it relates to employment and labor law. So how does the rise in robots affect employment? Because of my time, I'll just quickly share that, yes, there's been a lot of discussion around the fact that AI robots will take people's job. Also, I would like to say that beyond that, there's also a possibility of new job creation. So it's not just about the fact that AI or robots can take your job. It's about the fact that can we key into the emergence of artificial intelligence to create more jobs. So I'm trying to rush now. Labor law and employment challenges with robotization. There's the point that the group put together on gig economy, on like the long-term jobs that we do have that, you get your salary, you get annual salary, there are some benefits that comes with it, but with gig economy where people just work and or get gig and you do freelance and you get your job, some of these employment benefit that comes with traditional employment rights is not applicable. Yes, so I think I'm going to round up now. Just allow our mentor to just share more light on the part of robots being the legal personality of robots and the fact that the interchangeably usage of the word robots and artificial intelligence. And I also like to recognize the effort of the group members for putting this together. It's a whole lot, and I feel like we don't even have enough time to even deep dive to make research on this particular subject matter. But I hope you've been able to take 1 or 2 points from my presentation. Thank you so much for the privilege. Thank you.
Okay, Tamitola, thank you so much. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. One thing I liked so much was your smile throughout your presentation. It was so reassuring. Thank you so much for that. And one amazing thing with JIIPCC too is we might not have enough time to go through a whole lot of topics. That's why they're giving to us so that after now, JIIPCC sets the tone for us to go back and read some more research, write about these things as we get more knowledge on it. Thank you for an amazing, amazing presentation. Group 2, good job, good job.
Thank you.
I like, there's a particular thing you said about job creations with robots not just taking our jobs. Same thought I had too when I took this course. I wrote on a topic that AI would not take your jobs. AI will mostly take the jobs of those who do not know how to use AI. So once you know how to use AI, you're creating a job opportunity for yourself. Okay, guys, before we go to group 2, I know our mentor I started writing down some of the questions you were dishing out, so I know he will take that during his Viva on that. So before we go into group 2, please, can we quickly have my favorite part of every JIIPCC session? That's the picture time. Let's not miss that at all. Please, all mentees, do you mind turning, Mr. Gabriel is already smiling now, that's how you go about it. Okay, mentees, please, do you mind turning on your cameras and let's have an amazing picture time with JIIPCC. Oh, now I'm seeing, okay. The great men and women on this call that couldn't see their faces before. Okay. So we just smile for the camera and we'll take it away. Please ensure you take some screenshots as well. That's it. Hope you're doing that. Okay. Few seconds more. Mr. Abia, let's see that smile. I so enjoy Guang's, I hope I got that right. Guang's smile. I hope I got that correctly. Abdulrazak, so you can smile like this. Nice. Okay, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. I hope we got some amazing shots. I have some amazing shots from that. Thank you, group 2, for an amazing presentation. Okay, so we're going to go back to group 1 for their presentation. Is the presenter for group 1 ready now for the presentation, please? Group 1 presenter, are you ready now? Please, who is the presenter for group 1 or who is the backup presenter for group 1, please? Okay, it seems, are there group 1 members here? Please, if you're in group 1, kindly signify, please. So let's know if we can go on or there's something wrong.
So from my understanding, I think there's only one group. right? But there are delegation of
okay, but there are two presenters on one group. Okay,
yes.
Thank you. So please, who is second presenter, please? Who is second presenter? Sorry, thanks for that correction. Please, who is second presenter, please?
I think the person take excuse that there's an emergency, but I don't know who is standing in for.
Okay.
What I would say is the first presenter is Faith Ede. But if she's not available, we require the group leader to assign someone else or also to step in on her behalf. Since they all did the research together, someone can step in, from the group.
Okay, please, group leader, please. Who is stepping in as a backup presenter?
Can I make a suggestion? Maybe I could
go ahead, sir.
Yeah, maybe I could take some of the questions while they are figuring out who's going to come next, so it saves us time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm thinking that would be more.
The group, let's just go handle that privately and give us a feedback on whatever.
Do that in 5 minutes.
Coming from that.
Okay.
But please, mentees, for the future, let's always endeavor to have backup presenters at all times, so that it helps to avoid time lapse like this. Okay, I'll move over to our amiable mentor, Mr. Gabriel Udo, to take us further on his feedback on the presentation and any more light he wishes to share. And then before we go into the questions for today, Mr. Gabriel, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Temitola. That was a very insightful presentation, though you didn't have a lot of time to discuss more of the issues that I could see on the slide. And let me also advise, especially for purposes of the future, when this is something that most of us need to learn in the process of, not about the academic aspect of our, educational training, but when we have slides, the essence of having slides is to reduce the volume of information we have. Why it's difficult for you to catch up with time is that there's so much information on the slides that while you look at it, it's hard for you to know which is important and which is not. But if you prepare a slide, just read it, cut off most of the information. It's going to help you, especially with time management. But all the same, that was an impressive presentation, because as far as I'm concerned, if you were just standing in for someone, and you did quite well. First of all, let me quickly just give a little information as to the issue of legal personality and robots. First, the presenter, asked a question, talked about the issue of having a robot with any jurisdiction where there's a robot with legal personality. Now, this issue has been argued for a very long time, and the major problem with the question is that the concept of legal personality is a little bit multifaceted. So it's not just about having something that has been given certain rights and responsibilities, but it's also about consciousness and awareness. Because if you want to look at it from the angle of, for instance, Sophia that you had mentioned, Sophia was given, the hallmark of legal personality is citizenship. So if a country, if Saudi Arabia gave Sophia citizenship, and some headlines said the citizenship with a passport, like the first robot that has a passport. That robot has more rights in Saudi Arabia than you, if you're not from Saudi Arabia, as far as I'm concerned, because you can go in and out of Saudi Arabia, but you can't. Okay, so if we look at legal personality from the positive law perspective, then Sophia would have a legal personality. But when we look at the philosophical aspect of who is a legal person, what is it capable of doing? Can you hold it accountable or responsible for certain things? You cannot, because there is no awareness. So again, like you've mentioned, it's still a complicated issue in many areas. Some researchers have said that, there's legal personality. I mentioned earlier, if you read the work of David Gonkel, he's an American professor. I had an interview with him sometime last year, and he strongly believes that because robots are now more autonomous, they should be given the, we should start discussing fundamental human rights, fundamental rights for robots. So that's how far that has gone so far. But thank you for bringing that up. Now to the main question that you raised, I would not go much into the areas of labor law, but let me just quickly run through the description of robots and differentiation of robots from artificial intelligence. Like you said rightly, in many areas, and many people struggle with the differentiation between a robot and artificial intelligence, so to speak. But just imagine a human being and a brain. That's exactly how the difference between robots and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence deals with mostly sets of instructions. Okay, so you can have artificial intelligence running on your laptop, but it doesn't make that software on a software. It doesn't make that software a robot. The main difference is that a robot is a physical device. Okay, it's a physical device that can perform tasks based on sets of instructions, right? So when there are some of them, many robots require artificial intelligence to operate, but some just require a small set of algorithms. Like I mentioned, it depends on the complexity of the duty the robot is supposed to carry out. For instance, there are many vacuum cleaners that don't need to be, don't need the high-level artificial intelligence. They just need a set of algorithms to define the area within which they can move around. And then there is, let's say, a vacuum that does the job. So the only seemingly intelligent system in that vacuum cleaner is the moving around, which is something almost any robot can be able to do. So it's not like it's a fully autonomous system. It's not like it's an artificial intelligence. It's just a set of codes. A calculator is not, it does not use artificial intelligence, right? So some of these physical devices or robotic arms in places are able, in industrial complexes, for instance, they are able to pick something from point A and just land it at point B. It doesn't mean it's using artificial intelligence. It just means that it's been programmed to move from one point to another. So those are robots that if a human being walks in while it's moving, it will hit the human being because it's only been programmed to move. There is no intelligence. It's just moving from point A to point B, right? It's like putting something on sliding a tire. It just rolls. Okay, so at that level, there is no AI involved. Basically, it's just a set of algorithms that define the movement, the criteria for the movement. Whereas on the other hand, there are very complex systems like autonomous weapons or electric cars, self-driving cars, drones. These ones need high level of intelligence to navigate the environment and to carry out certain duties. These are the ones that, it's like having a human being without a brain when or something is wrong with the person's brain. But in the case of artificial intelligence, you have a highly developed brain in the human being, and the human being can, for instance, say, if I open the window, I'm going to get cold, and understand that it doesn't have to open the window, right? So that's the main difference. There are many types of robots. I can think of 4 or 5 different. There are autonomous mobile robots, like self-driving cars. They just move, just the fact that they can move. Those are autonomous robots too. There are autonomous guided vehicles. Okay, some are not like self-driving cars. They are just moving on predefined paths. So they say this thing, like I mentioned, they need human supervision, especially. They are just vehicles that are defined paths for them. If that path changes, the system will crash. If you design an autonomous guided vehicle to move on your corridor, a straight corridor, the day you change the direction of the corridor, you're going to crash the vehicle because there's a predefined path for it. There's also what we call the articulated robots, like the industrial robots I mentioned, robotic arms that are used for construction and all that. Then we have the humanoids like Sophia that we mentioned, the cobots. You find human beings with the extra arm that are capable. So they work with the human being. These are forgotten the name. It's not autonomous basically, but it works with a human being. And then there are hybrids, those that can be autonomous, those that cannot be, that can be used for other purposes that are not autonomous. So there are so many, but the main difference is that one has a physical value, and the robot is something physical. You can have a robot that is physical, but artificial intelligence is a technology, basically. It's more like a set of codes. So you can implant a set of codes into a robot, but then you must also understand that a robot must be built in a structure that that when a software, for instance, is installed on it, it understands all the structures. A robot without an arm will not be able to pick things up. Even if you add a software, you use a software that says, or artificial intelligence that says, pick things here and drop here. As long as it doesn't have an arm, there are going to be issues. So this is the main thing I thought we should highlight before we go on with the discussion. If there are any further questions, I'm sure I can take them along the line. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Please, Tamitola, was that properly? Did you get what you're looking for from there, please? Because I know he did justice to that.
Yes, please, 100%. Quite detailed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm seeing a question on the chat box.
Yeah.
We see our questions from our mentees though, so I think I'll start with this. If you have any further questions, you can kindly raise up your hands. So we're trying to work on my camera to come back on. So Gabriel, the question reads, can moral obligations be programmed into robotics with AI software? For example, can an autonomous car have self-awareness to break a traffic law to avoid an accident? Okay, we move on to say, okay, that's the first question. Okay,
yeah. Well, that is usually, it always comes up when people discuss robotics. I hear specialists talk about, the plan to have self-awareness in robots. But so far, first, the difference between a robot, an intelligent system, and an intelligent human being is self-awareness, the capacity to take decisions on the spot. Okay, so first, it's not possible so far to program moral obligations into robots. So if you're defining the paths, or if you're giving instruction to a robot, it's going to be the transfer of your own understanding of moral obligations. So a robot, for instance, cannot say, okay, because there's a human being in my path, I have to stop. If the instruction to that robot was keep moving, nothing else would happen. It doesn't understand. There is no moral understanding of what could happen. I'm going to kill someone. But on the other hand, especially with artificial intelligence, robots can be programmed with different pathways, options. Okay, so you can have robots. It's just having a set of codes, ones and zeros. If this is a human being, shoot. If the human being is a child, don't shoot. Okay, so it's not like, it doesn't mean the robot understands. It doesn't mean the robot is morally obligated to carry out, to do or not to do certain things. Again, it's just following instructions. So the moral obligation understanding of the robot is obeying the instruction. So it's going to be, if you're a programmer and you understand moral obligations. Look, for example, the second part of the question, can an autonomous car have self-awareness to break a traffic law to avoid an accident? No, it cannot have self-awareness, but it can be programmed in such a way that it breaks a traffic law. If a robot, for instance, is, the overall instruction on the software is never hit a human being. Now, and it's driving on the road, there's a human being and the light shows red. It doesn't matter what the law says. What matters is that it has been instructed never to hit a human being. So it doesn't understand the law. It doesn't understand the implications of doing or not doing something. It just understands that there's an instruction and it has to carry it out. So yes, you can program robots to do certain things, but it doesn't make them self-aware. It just means that the person that programs the robot needs to be self-aware, needs to be, that's why we have ethics and laws. Those laws are not even to guide the robots, it's to guide the people that produce the robots, is to remind the producers of the moral obligations that they have, so that when they are, defining the duties of a robot, they would understand that. And this is also the same thing with when we look at Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. It defines what the robot should do, but it's not basically about the robot. It's about the human beings that build the robots. So yeah, self-awareness, no, but to code a robot to be able to do certain things that look like they are aware, yeah, that can be done, but it's not because they are self-aware. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. That's true, though. Once you become self-aware, that means it's now human. I say. Okay, so the next question from Philip Nwosu. In an event where a robot acts injuriously to a third party as a human, who bears the liability? I think he mentioned something like that during his presentation earlier.
Yeah, I talked about that.
Yes.
So far, like it's been mentioned in the presentation, that robots basically can fit into many legal frameworks. Okay, we have liability in the law of thought, we have employment law and all that. So first of all, we have to look at what laws, what legal frameworks, applies to that situation. If a robot injures a human being in the work area, for instance, we go back to the labor laws. Who bears the liability for that? There's vicarious liability in the law of thought, of course, and robots, as far as I'm concerned, so far, are treated as properties, or the same thing like if a dog that I own bites someone, I'm held responsible. It's my dog. It doesn't matter who I bought the dog from, or whether the mother of the dog was mad or something. It doesn't matter. I'm the one that owns the dog, so I am liable for that. So I think this also is applicable to robotics, especially when it comes to liabilities under the law of thought. So yeah.
Okay, sir. So that means we can agree that where someone creates a robot and that actually goes and probably acts injurious to someone, is the creator's creator is liable. So in the case where this creator sells the robot to another individual, and this robot actually acts or device, probably the instructions is being given, would the liability go back to the creator now or the new owner?
Yeah, now that's usually where we have the issue of responsibility and accountability. And to solve this, we usually first we look at the contract, we look at the situation. If, let's say, I design a robot to shoot people, okay, or I design a robot and I arm it with a gun with bullets, and I sell it to someone, let's say I sell it to Mr. B, and Mr. B says he's a hunter, but he doesn't know how to shoot. He needs a robot to help him shoot. And I sit Mr. B down and I tell him this robot is fully armed. It has bullets, it has guns, it can kill people. But sign here, you have to indemnify me from any liability for whatever it does, because now I have explained to you that it is capable of killing people. If you do this, it would have accidents, it will kill people. And Mr. B signs the contract. I'm off. Now, whatever happens within the boundaries of that agreement, Mr. B had already agreed, accepted to bear the liabilities for whatever activities of the robot are, with the full understanding of what the robot does. Now, if Mr. B later discovers, maybe I told Mr. B that, yeah, it can hurt people, but it uses rubber bullets. And then it accidentally shoots someone and they realize that they were not rubber bullets. Then there was a problem with the contract itself. So they have to trace me back. They have to trace it back to me, who built the robot, because there was no transparency. There was no full, what do we call it? I did not tell the customer everything. So he couldn't have prevented that because he didn't foresee it. He didn't understand that aspect of the robot. So this is usually very complicated. It depends first on the circumstances. Secondly, it depends on if they are paper. When you hear things like Toyota withdraws 1 million cars from the market, yeah, because there were no specific, once they discover that there's a brake system failure or something, and they trace it back to the people that built the car, the liability is on them. And they know that if 1 million cars have the same problem, they are going to close the company to pay liabilities. So they quickly withdraw those cars from the market, right? If after withdraw or telling people return the cars and get back your money, you still choose to drive it, at that point, you're accepting liability for whatever happens after that. So there are so many angles to the discussion. Basically, if the person that buys the robot understands everything that the robot is capable of doing, signs liability, indemnification forms, and goes ahead to use it, whatever happens, except it's unforeseeable, something that couldn't have been foreseen by anyone, and it could be seen as an accident, but mostly it still traced back to the primary user of the road.
Okay, sir, thank you so much. If I still go to our main questions from the groups, Mr. Philip is still asking. He said he didn't really get so much on your explanation on the legal personality of robots. If you could throw in more light on that. I know that basically, okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, like I mentioned, first of all, there's still a lot of confusion with regards what legal personality truly is. So like I mentioned earlier also, if you look at it from the positive law angle, a legal person, for instance, recognition of a legal person in Nigeria would be the fact that the person is an adult, for instance, or has a passport or is a citizen of Nigeria. So under positive law, a person under certain ages commits a crime and is not regarded as having committed a crime because he's an infant. Or under the Infant Relief Act, for instance, a child goes into a contract and then the law says there's no legal personality on the other end of the contract because it's a child. So the understanding of legal personality under positive law, under our usual, our understanding, under the legal understanding of legal personality is a person with a capacity to carry out certain instructions and with understanding and all that. And one of the hallmarks of legal personality, as far as I'm concerned, is citizenship. So because before you're given citizenship of a country, except in cases of an infant, then you must have understood there's a certain level of understanding, not just of the country, but of laws, regulations, the do's and don'ts, sometimes languages and all that. So before you get through all those hurdles and get the citizenship of a country, especially not a country you were born in, then it means you have, there's a lot of things you've gone through. So when a person has a passport of a country, it would be seen that this person has, a legal personality. And that's where, especially for that country, you could be a legal person in a country, in another country, you're not recognized. If you go to another country without a passport and without a visa, you'll be sent back to your country. Not because you're not a human being, but because you're not recognized in that country under the country's laws and legislations. That's the one part. But with regards to ethics, now under that first part, you could say that Sophia, you would see so many arguments on that Sophia has a legal personality in Saudi Arabia, because there are certain things Sophia is even allowed to do that you are not allowed to do, even as a human being, right? Now, that's the one part. On the other hand, when we look at the true understanding of, a legal identity, who is a person, the issues of self-awareness and understanding, a certain level of understanding, intelligence, human level intelligence comes in. And under that, you cannot say that a robot or it would appear that only a human being should be able to have legal personality with regards to things like understanding things, self-awareness, especially conscience, moral obligations, accountability, the capability to be held accountable for certain things. So this is what I think. I don't know whether I explained it properly.
Hello, Mr. Philip, are you there?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. I know that so much, a lot of time, this argument comes mostly with AI. When they get to AI and IP, this is one thing that really bombards the brain, because you're asking yourself, example with GPT and rights, should he have rights to have IP rights and all that? And the question of legal personality would always be a big deal there. I know by the time we get to that particular topic, we'll still come back to this. Before we go into the questions, please, I want to remind all mentees, do not forget that the JIIPCC has the 30 minutes timeout with your favorite mentor. You could reach out to any of the management members of JIIPCC to register for 30 minutes with your favorite mentor. Mr. Gabriel is teaching so much amazing wisdom here. So imagine where you have 30 minutes alone with him, for example, if he's a favorite mentor, 30 minutes with him alone and giving him the hard questions as they come. It will really, really be an amazing time. So do not forget to reach out to the management team of JIIPCC to register for the 30 minutes with your favorite mentor. I believe that someone is going to learn a whole lot from it. Okay, so these questions came in from the group during the research. The first one reads, what types of regulations and oversight mechanisms are currently in place to ensure the safe and ethical development and deployment of robotics technology?
Okay, I know I mentioned that very briefly during my presentation, but I just quickly grilled over it. So first of all, it's like I said earlier, we do not have so far at the global level, like we have specific laws for certain specific, you have laws for treaties from the International Labour Organization, for instance, with regards to, there's no law specifically so far that deals with, let's say, an international level treaty that deals with robotics. But we have regulations here and there, most of which deal generally with artificial intelligence or automated systems, not specifically on robots also. And like I mentioned, regulations are made based on, mostly dependent on the perceived risks that comes from a system. And like I also did say, perceived risk from a robot, most times, some of which are not already covered by, let's say, labor law. Labor law would, talk about, or loss of thought would talk about injuries, okay? Labor law would deal with other related circumstances in the workplaces. Now, there are some that are probably not covered there, but for instance, you could say that loss of thought would cover issues of safety also. Maybe not conclusively, but certain areas. There are also other certification laws that, regulations that require that robotic experts are certified. These are also frameworks that try to reduce ethical risks with regards to robotics. But there are, I found, I've worked on a couple of rules and organizations, especially in places that do not have specific robot-related laws. Of course, we first talk about the data protection laws. Like I mentioned earlier, privacy is a big issue also with regards to robotics, especially robots that use artificial intelligence. So we talk about the GDPR. We could also mention data privacy laws in Nigeria, like the NDPR, for instance. Then the US has what they call the National Robotics Initiative. It was launched a couple of years ago. That is not a law, it's not a regulation, a policy framework that is used to accelerate the development of robots within certain ethical and societal implications and guidelines. We also have South Korea has a very the Robot Ethics Charter. That's what they call it. It's a set of established guidelines. Most of these are just guidelines. There's also one in Japan. The UK has there's the, I'm not sure that was approved yet, but it's just a set of guidelines from an organization that was that is called RAS, Robotics and Autonomous Systems. These guidelines were to promote safe and ethical use of robotics, basically. I know in South Africa, there's a national artificial intelligence strategy that also talks about the use of artificial intelligence-based robots. Back in Nigeria, we do not have anything that sounds like it could cover robotics, sincerely, but I know there's RAIN, the Robotics and Artificial Intelligence Nigeria. It's an organization that deals with advancing robotics. I don't know, some of you could also look into these organizations. I saw Kezia here. I hope I got the name well. Maybe Kezia would tell us a little bit about what's going on at the Kenza Technopolis. Last year, when I went for a conference on smart city technology, somebody mentioned they call it the Silicon Savannah of Kenya. I haven't known much about it, but they said it's a technology and innovation hub that they're trying to attract tech-based international companies and also look at how to ethically produce these systems. So yeah, generally, we do not have specific laws on robotics, but there are certain international laws that discuss areas related to robotics. If you look at the UN Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, it deals with robotic systems that have the capacity to be labeled as conventional weapon systems. So these are the available frameworks now, but mostly, since more robots are beginning to be dependent on artificial intelligence, we're also hoping that the legal framework of artificial intelligence, the improvements will also affect the improvements of ethical frameworks for robotics.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you. We'll move on to the second question. How can society, hello? Someone say something, please. Okay, how can society balance the benefits and risks of increased automation and robotics, particularly in industries where automation may displace human workers?
Yeah, that is where we are as a society. We are all asking that question, but what we've recognized is that there has to be some balance. It's not just going to affect you. You know, people have the impression that I heard, I think during the presentation, the presenter mentioned, and it's a general opinion. Everyone says robots are not that harmful. They're not going to displace human workers. Robots are going to displace human workers. The only good news or the only consolation we give to ourselves is that we will find another job. Of course, yeah, human beings in the early days of the 19th century, we used to have human beings carry people on their backs.
Very true.
So when cars came, I'm sure those people started saying, "Kai, our jobs are over," you know, or people that sold horses were now like, "Oh God, we're going to lose revenue." So, but now we don't just consider the human level implication in workplaces. I'll go to industries. But first, let's look at the general implication. Let's say a company, I had mentioned at some point that the GDPR of countries are going to get affected at some point, especially countries that are mostly dependent on tax revenues. If you know how much Nigeria earns from personal income tax in a year, you would understand that when human beings lose their job, the country's GDP will be affected. When we have robots that do not need to pay taxes, they don't have income. The personal income tax comes from the personal income of human beings that actually work. So when you displace human beings and you use robots to work, just imagine how much would have been lost in revenue to go. These are considerations. They're not even long-term considerations. So it's not, we look at it like it's just going to affect the industry or the human beings. No, it's going to affect, you know, we don't have a buffer to say in 5 years, people can move from this job to another job. Within those 5 years, how are these countries going to survive that were dependent on taxes? How are those human beings themselves supposed to survive for 5 years? How are they going to get money to pay for the new training, to move, you know, to learn new things? Of course, some of us are lucky to get these trainings. You have access to the internet, you can learn things, but you go to villages where people don't know what YouTube is. And all they are doing is they're doing some of these mini jobs, and somebody goes to a local post office and says, you can use ChatGPT to generate this information, and they sack the person, and the person doesn't even know, has done this thing for like 20 years and doesn't know where to begin. How does the person start going to the university to think, or start looking for a phone that can use YouTube and all that? So it's more complicated than we just saying we will change jobs. It's easy to say. It's like you are in year 5, you're studying law, your final year, somebody says, what if they scrap law from the university? Say, I will change course. Yes, you will, but how many years will it take you to get back up here? How much money would you spend to get back up here? So those are the other things we don't, you know, look into. Now, we're trying to create the balance. There's first, we can have regulations. When we sit down and negotiate on regulations, then we ask people, what do you need? If we have this, will it harm you? Will it harm your livelihood? When we realize that some of these things can actually really harm the livelihood, it's either we create a buffer for that period, or we completely just hold on until our society is ready. Because most societies are not ready for automation. We are not ready for certain levels of robotics. So yeah, especially in industries where automation may displace human workers, yes, we need to create that balance. I give an example. We could have laws, for instance, or regulations that say a company that has a size, let's say, has a certain capital, for instance, must have this number of human staff. And it doesn't matter whether the jobs they do can be automated or not. So if we have regulations that insist on that, then we can keep reducing, we can slowly reduce the requirement for human staffing until there is the required balance in the society. If we don't have those regulations, the society will wake up much later, but we're going to have a lot of crashes, especially people are going to struggle through things. We can also have this in many other areas. In the medical field, we can say hospitals that do not have a certain number of staff and should not be allowed to have robots, for instance, or companies that do not have a certain, if you have 500 million as capital, if you don't have 500 staff or human staff, please don't take any robots. So you can choose to automate jobs, but then you need to have a required number of staff. So these are some of the perceptions that I've had about this, but I'm sure it's still open to further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, the final question we have here in the chat box. I hope if any mentee with a question, please kindly raise up your hand so we can get through to that. Okay, the last question here, what ethical considerations should be taken into account when designing and programming robots, particularly in fields such as healthcare and law enforcement, where their decisions could directly impact human lives?
Yeah, thank you. Again, there are so many ethical implications in robotics, especially because some come from artificial intelligence and some are from the physical infrastructure of the robot itself. Yeah, so for instance, in the case of a car that's driving, you're going to think of ethical implications of building an autonomous car and ethical implications of, the impact it creates on contact with human beings. That's more like the artificial intelligence consideration, safety consideration, and the robotic safety consideration because of its physical component. Now, with regards especially to fields such as healthcare, there are so many of them. We still go back to issues like privacy. There are so many robots that, they work on the patients and there are pictures of the patients all over. Most time the patients are not even wearing clothes. So we consider issues of privacy, data protection, basically. We also consider safety. How safe are these systems? We consider transparency. Before a patient is, before a surgery is carried out on a patient, he needs to know that it's not a human being, it's going to be a robot, and he needs to know what is possible and what is not possible. There has to be full disclosure as to the, so we need to look at issues like transparency, accountability. If the system fails, who do you hold responsible? Is it the doctor? Is it the hospital? Is it those that built the robots? What level of accountability, do we have? And then we also look at the field of law enforcement. This has been highly debated because law enforcement it's a lot more open to the probability that law enforcement related robots are going to take more human lives is always there. So we look at safety. We also look at what legislations do we even have regards the law enforcement, who is behind, who is the human in the loop. Okay, so accountability and responsibility is always there. The person should be trained. Still, the issue of accountability and responsibility. We don't just have someone that sits at the back and says, "Okay, shoot," without understanding the requirements for certain activities or without understanding the environment. So there are so many of them, but mostly if you look at, most of them come from the area of the ethical requirements in, as per artificial intelligence. And then there are few of them that deal with the safety. Where can you place this, for instance, a robotic, and where can you keep it in such a way that when it turns, it does not hit people and all that. So these are just the general areas that we currently have. But I'm sure there's a lot more that's still being developed, especially since the field of robotics is still improving in the coming years.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Mentees, please, you may wish to unmute yourself. And if you have any further questions for our mentor, we'll probably take two. If there's none, let us say a big thank you to Mr. Gabriel for an amazing presentation, an amazing feedback on the questions and the presentation. You've done an amazing job as usual. Thank you so much for always being here with us on JIIPCC. And for some mentees, if you notice. Okay, let me check for that.
Abia has a hand. Is it old or is it new?
Abia, I think it's taking down the hand.
I can still see a hand, I hope. Okay.
No, I can't see it no more.
Okay.
Abia. Okay.
Okay, maybe it's
So that being said, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Gabriel has said some very important things. For example, I want to go read up on rain. I want to know how well that functions in Nigeria. So mentees, you can always go check out on these, but we can get so much more knowledge to share with the world. That's the main goal of JIIPCC, to have so much knowledge and then share it with the world and also advance ourselves. One more time, Mr. Gabriel, thank you for an amazing time with you. I'll hand over to the wonderful Mr. Hussein now, please.
Thank you very much, God's love Kamalu, for moderating on behalf of JIIPCC today. I believe you did a very great job. Thank you very much, Mr. Gabriel. He's the only one that failed us out last week, and he still came to fill us out this week. We had the same mentors we were supposed to have last week for this week, and they all couldn't make it to the call. So thank you very much for making it and taking time to always come to mentor us, Mr. Gabriel. Thank you very much to all the group members that put on the research and the PowerPoint presentation. Please, you can do more better. When we assign the presenter 1 and presenter 2, we expect that you prepare yourself a day before the time. And if you won't be able to make it, you just send the message to your group leader to enable him assign someone else or take the responsibility, so we can get our presentations ready on the day and the time we are being called upon. So please take note of that. Our future group leaders and group members, we are all expected to work as a team. We don't expect everyone to be always available, but if someone is missing, we just expect every other group member to step in and just fill in the space, so it won't affect the whole program. So that's for me. Happy Friday to everyone. I hope you're all having an amazing day and have a lovely weekend. So bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Have a nice weekend too.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.